Hi, I just want to share a dream that I believe the Lord gave me some time ago. When the Lord is speaking to me in dreams, I feel in the dream that I'm being prompted or pointed towards specific things. So I'll just explain the dream, and as I'm explaining it, I will point out what I feel the Lord had been pointing out to me in that dream. So I was on what seemed to me like I had a sense that I was on the third floor of a palace, and this palace was white. So I was inside a palace on the third floor, and if I was to look above me, there was a ceiling, and the ceiling was of such great height that you would need a massive piece of machinery to get up, or something like a cherry picker or something. It's like a really, really, really tall ceiling, massively tall ceiling. To my right hand side, there was a massive row of pillars, and so behind the pillars was a balcony. So if you could imagine, you're on the third floor. If you were to look over to the balcony, you would look down and you would see the ground floor. There was a gentleman who was older than me, probably 60s, 70 years of age, something like that. And he was older than me. I think he was wearing a white suit. I think he was dressed in white. Basically, this palace that I was in began to shake. And as the palace began to shake, I was prompted to look above. And when I looked above, I seen what I can only describe as dust, the air filling with dust from this great, high ceiling. That the whole air began to fill with dust. At that point, I was aware that there was something greater above that ceiling. So above that ceiling, I was aware that there was something great above the ceiling. On my right hand side, the pillars were shaking. The whole building was shaking. But there was a gentleman who had been older man, who had been standing close to the pillars, closer to the pillars than what I had been. He fell over and collapsed on the ground. He did not get up. I don't know whether he was dead or whether he had, just collapsed or what, but he landed on the ground and didn't get up again. At that point, I was made aware that I needed to get to the ground floor. And so I was aware that getting to the ground floor was a place of safety. So I began, there was other people there, and other people started to make their way, rush from the third floor and make their way down. I made my way down to as I started making my way down to the ground floor, the dream then ended. But when I woke, I in my spirit, I had a sense that the ground floor really meant humility, humbling ourselves in prayer, which is a place of safety. So that's what I was made aware of. So I really got a sense that what the Lord was saying to me was that there is a shaking coming from a great height, okay? And that shaking that's going to come, right? There are going to be casualties, okay? So there was a casualty. But the pillars stood. So as this palace was being shaken, the pillars stood, but there was someone who was a casualty, and so I had to make my way from that third floor and make my way down onto the lower floor, the ground floor, and which was a place of safety. And I believe that place of safety is humbling ourselves in prayer. So I just have a couple of pieces of scripture to give you. Take this prayerfully to the Lord. This dream. I'm just speaking it out as I remember it. And here's a couple of pieces of scripture that are in connection to pillars and shaking. And it says in Job 9:6, which shaketh the earth out of her place, and the pillars thereof tremble. So pillars are significant because pillars and shaking are connected. So when there's a shaking come, the pillars are vitally important. So they are. It's very important. Pillars are vitally important when there's a shaking takes place because when there's a shaking coming, there are casualties. I know that off the top of my head that the Greeks used pillars when they were building their buildings, and Greece was renowned for earthquakes. So pillars are very important. If I look at Job 26:11, the pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his reproof. So the pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his reproof. So there are pillars in heaven. There are pillars in heaven, and they do shake. The pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his reproof. And if I look at another piece of scripture which talks about pillars, and it's Galatians 2 verse 9, and it says, and when James, Cephas, and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that was given unto me, they gave to me and Barnabas the right hands of fellowship, that we should go unto the heathen, and they unto the circumcision. So it's clearly stating here that these men seem to be pillars, perceived the grace that was given unto me. So these men seem to be pillars. If I can kind of tie that in with Sodom and Gomorrah, when Lot and his family were taken out of Sodom and Gomorrah, they were told not to look back, and when they came out and judgment fell upon that place, Lot's wife looked back and she became a pillar of salt. So there was a price to pay for looking back when judgment comes, looking back at loss. And so when the pillars of heaven are being shaken, the pillars of earth are being shaken, we don't want to look back at the material things that we had should we suffer loss. We don't want to look back. We don't want to look back. Because when judgment comes, there will be loss. There will be great loss. And so we need to be looking to the Lord to sustain us, to look after us, and to keep us right. And we're not to be attached to the things of this earth. We're to be in the world, but not of the world. And we're not to be attached to things or places. And we're not to make idols of things or people. So, in the instance of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's wife looked back. to see the destruction that was taking place in the place that some of her heart still was. So as I say, take this dream, take it to the Lord. I've given you some pieces of scripture there that show that pillars are going to be shaken. And I just hope that this message has given you some insight. May the Lord bless and keep you. Amen.